Good afternoon. Do want to thank you all for attending this summit, first off, and then secondly, for attending Ms. Blair's presentation, which is going to be phenomenal. The presentation that she's going over, of course, what is it? Understanding the implications of the transfer portal. Very important, very, very important. For anyone who's looking for closed captioning, you can go down to the live transcript and then show subtitle if you would like to do that. And then for any questions, just feel free to throw them out there during the conversation and hopefully we can get some good convo going. You know, don't hold on to those questions. Just throw them out there. You can put it in the chat. You can speak up, you know, whatever we want to do to engage with us today. And from there, I am going to hand it over and you won't see my face or hear my voice until the end. So Blair, do your thing.
Except for you're going to read the questions in the chat if they come up.
That part, yes, I will be doing that too. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Keenan. I'm Blair Napolitano. I've been at LSU almost 20 years. I'm in the compliance office and I do most of the eligibility, if not all, both incoming and continuing from the compliance perspective, which means I also get to write the waivers when they fall short of whatever we're looking for from both the initial and the continuing side of things. So we all know that the transfer portal or the transfers are exponential. They're rising rapidly. I checked on our presentation or our website today. We have 70 people that are in our portal from leaving LSU, and we're currently tracking on 40. And we know that the windows for the spring sports haven't really opened up yet. So kind of want to just take this time to talk about some best practices and key constituents that we work with on campus, and certainly to engage you all as well to say something. If you hate it, as our coaches say, it's not going away. So we'll save those for a different time, but I just kind of talk about what we have and how we kind of navigate this error that is the transfer portal. So a couple topics we'll talk about how we got here and then where we go from here basically is the gist of what we want to talk about. So again, I'm not an expert in the field. I was just asked to speak about it. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt, unless you think it's phenomenal, then for sure, let me know that part. So in my opinion, there's how we got here, right? So we're here now with an influx of transfers. And as I come to think of it, there's three main issues that brought us to the point today: the transfer portal and the one-time transfer, COVID, and the NIL. And I'll take a little bit of time just to kind of delve into how I think those three kind of all spearheaded together to come together where we are today with the transfer influx of numbers. So for you all that may be new to the business or haven't been around for a long time, we'll kind of just talk about how each of these little cogs in the wheel got started and where we are today. So from the transfer portal one-time transfer exception, for those of you that have been around for a long time, the student athlete would walk into the compliance officer's office and say, hey, I'm looking to leave this school. And we would call the coach and say, hey, where you want to go? And they're like, well, definitely not any school in the state, definitely not any school that's on our schedule, definitely not any school on our schedule in our conference. And they would restrict where the athletes would be able to transfer to. So in October, the permission to contact of 2018, the permission to contact notification process went away. And so the schools could no longer restrict where a student could transfer, which meant the influx of the portal where athletes were able to go and say wherever they want to go. So they began to have free reign of where they wanted to go at that point. Coupled with that, in the 2021 school year, prior to that, the big four sports, baseball, men's and women's basketball, football, and ice hockey, had to serve a year in residence whenever they transferred. So in April of 21, that got changed to the athletes being able to transfer whenever they wanted. So they didn't have to serve a year in residence. So if they were reluctant to leave, prior to that, the coach would tell them where they could go or where they couldn't go. And then now it was when they could go, right? So they would, if they were trying to leave after the freshman year, sophomore year, after a good season, they knew that they'd have to serve a year in residence in those sports that I mentioned before. And then again in October of 21 or in 21-22 school year, that went away and every sport got the ability to transfer immediately one time, which we'll talk about the 2-time, 3-time, 4-time transfers later. So, again, or maybe you don't know, they have windows and dates of when the coaches can provide, or when the student athletes, can provide this notification. So how we have it at LSU, and again, every school is different. We use ARMS, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And the athletes enter a workflow to request permission to contact or permission to be placed in the transfer portal, of which we have 2 days to place them in. They get a bunch of emails, automatic emails, making sure that they're leaving good standing, get an exit physical, all that kind of things that are automated to them through completing of this notification to transfer workflow. But again, how it impacts you guys is as academic services is the windows that they are provided, sometimes bust up to the term starting or the holiday period. So that's kind of what we've determined as well to be issued. So they have the fall sports window, they have the 45-day window for fall sports, and then this May 1st through 15th window as well for whenever they are leaving again, possibly in the spring. And winter sports, they got 60 days after the championship, and then spring sports, they have a fall model, and then after their championship selections are made. So as I mentioned early with the timing, like the mid-year football, they aren't eligible to enter the portal until early December, and sometimes they won't even choose to enter the portal until after bowl game for participation or lack of playing time or fear of retaliation, if you will. So those are just the things that are, I guess, that they'd be cognizant of as well. And for example, in baseball as a spring sport, as you all know, in the academic advising world, if you work with baseball, they're one of the only sports that you have to be eligible in the fall to be able to continue your eligibility and be eligible in the championship segment. So where their portal doesn't open until May, they maybe need to be evaluated and have to attend summer school where they are still in their championship season, maybe somewhere, going into June if they're lucky. But that would obviously impact from an academic advising standpoint as well, because the courses, you get transcripts really quickly, and maybe they need to go to summer school, but your place only has one session, and they're still trying to play, with their current team, or of course they have desires to play summer ball. So those are just two examples of sports that are definitely impacted from an academic perspective, from an academic advising perspective, just as the timing of getting those transcripts evaluated and having those athletes report to take courses as soon as possible for their eligibility. So if you're not familiar, each sport, I'll just pause on these slides for a little bit, but each sport that the NCAA sponsors has their windows outlined for them. So this is public each year. Again, from the selection show, whether even cross country regionals has a selection show, then that's when they start their 45-day windows. So the fall sports have that window, and then football's spring window is through the end of through Sunday, and then all the other fall sports start on Monday. So the soccer and volleyball people that went through spring ball could decide that they want to transfer, and they have 15 days. For the winter sports, you'll see this is again for this year. They had an exception carved out for this year with the mid-year transfers, but moving forward, sports like men's and women's basketball, they won't be able to enter the portal until after the year. So if they go through the first couple of games in November, see the writing on the wall, they're not going to be playing as much as they wanted to, they won't be able to leave that institution until the spring semester is completed, because they won't be able to enter the portal until March. And then again, indoor, outdoor, and cross country have 3 different windows. So they could enter, if they're on a roster, they could enter under any of those time periods. But again, if maybe a coach would say they can't run outdoor if they're in the portal, and the coach certainly has that right to do so. As well, again, the spring sports we talked about, baseball is not opening until May 30th, when summer school for us our first term has already started at that point. So could cause some issues for those athletes that are needing summer school to be eligible. And again, some of these are later into the summer. Just because they go into the portal at that point doesn't necessarily mean that they've decided to transfer at that point, but these are the windows. So anybody have any questions about that? I'll pause for a second. No. Okay, great. So the other thing, in my opinion, that has impacted the influx of transfers is COVID. It seems like it was a long time ago, but for those freshmen and sophomores, they're still able to benefit from it. Again, the spring 2020 sports received an extension of eligibility, and then the fall and winter 21 sports also received a season extension of eligibility. So even if their season was able to go on. I know some spring sports like outdoor track didn't get started, but if they were able to play a complete season, they still got an extra year. So they had 6-year timeline instead of the 5-year clock to compete in 4 seasons. So what we've seen a lot of in that regard, the student athletes that maybe finish in 3.5 years, and maybe redshirted as a freshman or something, and then they're trying to pursue even a master's or a second master's or a master's, and then now they're on their certificate or 2 certificates or something like that, just to keep up with their eligibility, because they have to be enrolled, full-time with accordance with the program that they're in, but over a 6-year timeline, when a lot of times can get, maybe 1 or 2 degrees at that point. So from an academic advising standpoint, again, we're helping them try to manage what you can do in the short term and for the long term. So if they only come in for a spring semester, they finish their indoor volleyball and they want to do beach for 1 spring, what's feasible for them as a program that they would hopefully want to continue, that's both, maybe cost effective if they're not on scholarship, and efficient for them to finish in the limited time that they are here. Now they might have 2 years, they came after 4 and then they transfer you with 2 years of eligibility. And so we're trying to help them again figure out what they can do to maximize, whether it be a master's program, a second undergraduate, or a certificate. The third thing that we've come to face as a reality is the NIL. And again, I'm sure y'all are aware of it, but just as a recap, people are hitting the portal up as of July 21 when they changed the rules that said they can be compensated because they all think, or someone has told them, that the grass is greener somewhere else. They are playing, they're starting, they're great. Coaches have no idea that they're transferring, and then they want to put their name in the portal. And so some underlying people think that their agents are telling them, right, without being told, because they can't be contacted because they're not in the portal, that X amount of school can get you this much money, and the school that you're currently at can only get you this much money. Now, there's no reason to know that that's been happening or true, but the speculation is out there until Congress or the NCAA has some sort of bearings on that. I think NIL will continue to be a driver in the transfer window. So again, we've got the one-time transfer, and the portal and the dates, COVID and the extension of eligibility, and NIL all driving student athletes to want to leave their first school because of those reasons. They have more eligibility, they seek more money, or they seek an opportunity to play, and they know that they will have to sit whenever they do so. But that's just how we got here, right? So as for those of y'all that are in the academic chair, you're probably received a transcript for evaluation a number of different ways: slid under your door, via text message, via email, dropped, through a carrier service that may or may not have ever made it to your desk. So one of the things that we've done with the influx of transfers here, I mentioned we used ARMS earlier, is we created a workflow. And I kind of will walk you through this process, but I think it's been a saving grace when a coach calls and asks us, well, were they going to be eligible? Our first instinct is, well, did you do the workflow? And so that way, all the people and all the parties that need to be aware of the student's name and how far along they are in school are all getting the information at the same time. So as I mentioned, we use ARMS here at LSU. All of our coaches and athletic administrators and academic advisors have access to this. So they enter it, the prospect's name, their high school graduation year, and then their enrollment period, whether it be a summer, fall, or spring, and then whether or not they're coming as a freshman or a transfer. We do have the same workflow for freshmen that they want to get reads on early. They want to make sure that they're going to meet their qualifier status. So it's the same workflow, but for this purposes, we chose transfer. So whenever they answer, the coach is going to answer the qualifier status. Again, they may or may not know, so they could put unknown. Their transfer status is a drop down of 2-4 or 4-4, 4-2-4s, other, the 4-4, 4-4s, etc. And then will the student have a degree upon enrolling? So these are 2 questions that we've kind of tweaked as the process comes along. And then the second one being, what degree will they be seeking upon transfer? So sometimes they have a degree, but they're just going to come be a non-degree seeking student because they have 1 year of eligibility. Sometimes they have a degree and they're set on getting a graduate degree. So we've differentiated that to help our academic staff and our certification team not to know whether or not they need to do a full workup of the transferable courses. If they're coming to take undergraduate work again after graduating, we obviously have to make sure that the course was not duplicative. Or if they're going to graduate school, there's really no need to spend time evaluating the courses they took in undergrad because they get into graduate school on their own. So helpful in terms of knowing how many courses you need to evaluate and the purposes of where they're coming, what programs they're looking to pursue. So again, through the workflow, we'll ask how many colleges they went to. I think it goes up to 5 or 10, a large number for dual enrollment coursework if you happen to have those transcripts, and then the college name. And then it asks, like it says, do you have a transcript to upload from this school? And then if you have yes, then there's a place for you to upload it. And then we get an email. We also have the coach is responsible, or the person who's filling this in, to indicate at least 2 majors. So the first field is required, and we have the drop down of the entire LSU catalog as far as majors. Sometimes they pick the first A one, which I think is accounting. And sometimes they, look at their current transcript and see, well, they majored in communications here. So we'll say mass comm, communications, journalism, anything in that field. And that's why we left the additional comments box for them to kind of go into more detail, if they're potentially wanting to be looking at this, but could consider that, and that could be the text box at that point. So finally, when it gets to me, so we all get an email when it's submitted as a workflow. The sport administrator, the head coach knows what is input on their behalf, compliance, and the academic advisor. So then I go in the workflow and put this information in, looking at their transcript, the first full-time term, the benchmarks, whether it be percentage, or just 6 hours because they are graduating or a freshman, what their major was. And again, that's not always evident if they're a first or second year person, and how many credits they've completed and the credits in progress. Because if we get a transcript today, we know they might have 15 hours, still coming in for the spring semester. So again, that's emailed out to everybody, and then we get to work doing our evaluation process through campus. So as we talk about that moving forward here, we'll talk about our campus contacts and who's involved in the process here. I know some of you probably are one woman or one man shops on both the registrar side or the academic advising side. So just to let you know how we have the process set up, we have the compliance office obviously involved. The point of entry, I say, in terms of figuring out and reminding and making comments if they have a multiple transfer and will need to be a waiver. So that I'm the first stop for that. The sport specific academic advisor. So the way we do it here is each sport has an academic advisor. And so they're knowledgeable of the programs that are being run and what they're looking to pursue when they transfer here. As well as the college campus advisors, so that they can help, do the evaluations of the courses and figure out the final workups for percentage. And we put the deans on here. Obviously, for you guys that work on campus, you've probably heard a coach say, well, they get all their evaluations done overnight. Why does ours take so long? So we did involve the deans to let them know what the reasonableness factor is for when athletes, when courses should be evaluated through the system. We use a system called TEST that's on campus. And so we put the courses in, and the responsible party from each of the colleges approves them and researches them and determines whether or not they're equivalents. So the deans are involved in the event that we take more than what we think is the appropriate amount of time. Now, 15 minutes, and some might be the appropriate amount of time, but we give them a couple days, especially around the holiday periods. As I mentioned at the beginning, with the football transfers for mid-years happening when the university's closed, we did ask the deans, to be mindful of that, so that if someone needs to have a backup person to be able to evaluate, that they have designated that. And we also have, like I mentioned, our transfer evaluator. We have them housed in our admissions office, but I do know that the registrar on some campuses is available and has that role on campus. And then we also sometimes use the originating institution. So we're trying to track down syllabi. We may pull our heads together and say, oh, you used to work at this school. Do you think you could reach out to this, one of your colleagues and see if you can help us get a syllabus for this class that we're trying to, they said won't count, but we're trying to get some more details on. So that's who we're working with here at LSU. I guess I'll pause. Is there anybody else that you think is an important cog in this transfer evaluation process? Great. No. Okay. So I like how one person has their camera on. So I appreciate that. You're my go-to here. Thanks. So going back to the workflow, as I mentioned, we have the email, we get the email that has the academic advisor and the transfer evaluator. They put the courses in, they put the courses in this test system. We evaluate the courses, the joint effort from, again, contacting other schools, getting syllabi, those type of things. Working with the programs at the previous school, the current school, talking to the prospect themselves, working through course substitutions, like, well, at LSU, not every course is an equivalent. And then also knowing what the different college requirements are. We've had a couple of hiccups with that, like forgetting to back out hours of upper levels. Like, they need to have, 15 hours of 3,000 above. Well, all the courses are in that major, they're transferable, but then they had to be backed out because they were not upper levels. Or, those that are trying to get 80%, might not have their last 30 hours on campus. So those different types of things, again, to make sure that you're aware of those potential pitfalls.
Blair, seems to be a question.
I see that.
You want me to read it out to the group and then you take it from there?
Okay.
All right, awesome. Well, this is from Haley Adams, UNLV. Thank you, Haley. If our academic advisors manage bylaw 14, do you see that changing the workflow at all?
So Haley, since you're there and you're a person, tell me what you mean by that.
I just mean that our academic advisors, we manage the progress towards degree and just kind of making sure those bylaws are checked off. So I know that here there's we manage a little bit more of the compliance than I think at most other schools. So I'm just wondering if you see the flip for how the workflow processes through. Because I saw here on this slide, after workflow is submitted, academic advisors and transfer evaluators notified. But for us, it's kind of a mutual relationship between compliance. So, or if you have any thoughts about how that plays in.
Yeah, so I think for sure you could flip the workflow. I would love to say that y'all do all the work. That'd be great. But then for sure compliance, I know from at least here, maybe it's you. Are y'all writing PTE waivers as well when people are short, or is that from compliance?
That's from compliance.
Okay, so yeah, I think if you just flipped it, where if y'all were doing the initial workup and then compliance got the final workup or the answers and could provide feedback, I think that would be the same thing and would serve its purpose.
Thank you.
Blair, we have another one from Miss Jacqueline Taylor.
Great.
All right. I would like to first also say that I am not a part of this presentation, Blair, so do not try to throw this to me.
Okay.
How do you and your academic staff work together on transfer evaluations? How long is that transfer evaluation turnaround with the registrar office and deans of each college? Oof, have fun, Blair.
I'll say it's not fast enough, right? That's the first answer. And then we work very well over happy hour. I would say that's the second answer. But with regards to, in all seriousness, I think we have a good working relationship, but ultimately we have we don't do it in our registrar, we have it out of admissions, but the same type of person does the same role. So they're working with the different colleges. We actually created a workflow or a process chart, not a workflow in ARMS, but a process chart. So everyone kind of knows what their role is, whether it's sit back at the step or be more hands-on. And I think that's helped kind of everybody know their roles, because everyone ultimately wants to help as fast as they can, because the academic advisors are hearing from the coaches, whereas the registrar and the admissions people don't really have interaction with the coaches, so they don't, I guess, feel the fire breathing that the other people do. So we're all trying to do as fast as we can. So in all seriousness, as far as the evaluations, as the transfer portal has opened up, we have kids from all over. We've never had a kid from the University of Hawaii ever want to come to LSU, but then we get in a transcript and every single course needs to get evaluated. So whereas it used to be, we have Southeastern down the road. If somebody want to come from there, all their courses would already be in the system. So then we could start, sending it out. So it depends, obviously, how far along they are in the curriculum and whether or not they've come from a school that we're familiar with, as far as our Tiger transfer tables. But whatever the answer is, my coach's mind, it's not fast enough. Does that answer the question? Maybe? Okay, if not, put it back in the chat. All right, so after we worked with all of our campus contacts and we understand, I guess, the process of getting the courses evaluated, I think it's also important that I spelled offerings wrong, so don't look at that part. That the we understand what our options are. And again, each school is different in what they offer, but we have the undergraduate transfers, the traditional transfers, and then we have the graduate transfers trying to get their 5th year of eligibility or 4th and 5th year. And then after they've graduated, they may want to pursue, they may be non-degree seeking or what we call non-matriculating here, either both as an undergraduate or a graduate. And then we have the certificate program. So there's a whole lot of options as well for people that are transferring both programs and degrees levels themselves. So just to make sure, again, if you may have something to think outside the box, like, oh, they're not going to be eligible in this, or the deadline has passed in this program, would you possibly consider doing this program? So those are the conversations that both the coaches and the advisors are having, but just to keep your minds open with what's available at your institution to offer said people, because you don't want to lose them because you didn't have what the other school had. Again, ultimately, the goal is still progress towards degree and graduation. So as we talk through that, we know that from an academic advising standpoint, compliance standpoint, but somehow the coaches seem to forget that not all the courses will come over as equivalents, right? So they have 96 hours over there. They certainly should have 96 hours towards a degree over here. What we have, you know, the 80 percenters, we've had a couple of those try to transfer for eligibility. And again, even if they're equivalent, the major might not be offered. So the 96 hours may come over, which is a long shot, but then once they come over, the major that they were in is different than here. And for that purpose, you know, they're going to lose hours in the evaluation. So I guess I did want to mention in the workflow, we do have the coaches declare the major intended, and then we provide feedback. So through a different system where we provide updates. So they'll say they want to major in psychology, and then our advisors, once they've been evaluated, could say, well, they need 40%. So maybe they have 36 in psychology, but they'll have 52 in sociology. And then that's where we have the conversation about what they actually want to major in. But we don't want to just place them in something and have all of our athletes be in the same major or something like that. So we put it on the coaches initially to declare something on behalf of the student athlete. And the other issue I guess we've faced is quarter schools. Again, we lose hours, or you know, how they transfer over as 2.7 and 3 hours. It's doable, but just something to think about when people are coming from a quarter school to a semester school, or vice versa, how that impacts the benchmarks that need to be met moving down the line. So we also have the transfer. So again, just if you're not aware, starting in the next year's class, so those that are starting in 23-24, so the ones that we're signing now, their aid is obligated to the athlete for the duration until they earn their degree or until they've exhausted their eligibility. So if they come and they're not meeting progress towards degree, if they're a transfer student, they're still going to be on aid. So keep that in mind, as that might add stressors to you, because they're still going to be in the APR cohort. Even if they, you know, decide they don't, school's not their thing, we're still going to give them aid unless they decide to transfer the second time, which we know that that's going to be difficult. And then they go professional, or, you know, lose their amateur status by signing a professional contract. So does that impacts us moving forward? That has not been the case yet. So it's another wrinkle in the transfer portal life to make coaches be more accountable to the athletes that they're signing. So we'll see how that goes. The other thing, I guess, I wanted to talk about was waivers. There's progress towards degree waivers, and there's transfer waivers. I'm sure y'all are all familiar with at least one progress towards waiver for the various things that the NCAA looks at. But for the purposes of undergraduate transfer waivers, and again, this doesn't necessarily impact the academic portion of it, other than the fact that they need to be eligible as a prong when we're writing this from a compliance standpoint. But now that everyone gets a free pass to transfer once, the second time transfer is supposed to be more difficult. Up until this year, a previous head coach could say that they ran them off, they weren't going to play here, and that was fine. They could have kept their scholarship, but they weren't going to be able to play. They had a sick family member, change of major, those type of things. As of this 23-24 class coming in, the only way we've been told that the NCAA will approve waivers is their student athletes' physical or mental health, exigent circumstances, or a diagnosed education impacting disabilities. Again, as this is now the first year of this, we haven't seen precedent as this waiver got approved and what did they say, and our waiver got denied and what did we say, what did we do wrong. But potentially, or hopefully, the groundwork will be set, and then we'll have less multiple transfers, which will make your lives easier, as people will just be staying put and keeping their, making progress towards their degree. One thing to be mindful of is the postgraduate student waiver. So there is a carve out for those that have already graduated if they transfer twice. So we had an undergrad transfer and now they've graduated and they're wanting to come to your institution. And this is just applied on campus, and then we just notify the conference office. It's not necessarily filed with the NCAA, so there's not really a chance that it gets denied. But the key carve out for this is that the athlete is majoring in a program that the previous school doesn't offer. So whether it be a different graduate, a different undergrad, different major, different minor, all those different things, the school that they left have to be, can't offer it. So what I usually do is, find the program, or we work together to find the program, and then we email either the compliance staff at the previous school and say, hey, we're going to do kinesiology with a concentration in human movement at, a master's program. Y'all offer this, but it doesn't seem to be similar. And then the other school kind of approves or denies it, and then we file with the conference. So that is something that we work heavily with our advisors on, to kind of see both the previous schools' course catalog and our course catalog, to be able to differentiate, even if it's by, well, this has 6 hours of internship and that one has 9, so that we can be able to show that they're different, so that we're able to apply that waiver. So I'm not even in my chair. Sorry, I'm leaning over too far. Anyway, so that's what I had with regards to how the transfer portal is impacting us. So I'll open it up for further questions. Haley, I know you got one. Keenan, you have one.
I do not. Let me think though.
Could you just touch on a bit on like maybe your personal views, or it could be like, you could speak broadly if that's dangerous, but about with the availability of like entering the portal when there's like coach turnover, and kind of how there's almost like this double standard that coaches can more freely leave than like our students, and just speak on that. I'm always interested in what people have to say about that subject in the transfer portal.
Are we done recording, Keenan?
No, I think it's still going.
No, I just
Not
know
quite.
NCAA
Do you want me to pause it?
No, it's fine. I can speak broadly about it. I was kidding, but I do think that the NCAA, I don't know how we can get to where we want to get, because they used to be able, and this is me just speaking, they had this non-participation waiver, right? And so we were able to argue, well, our new head coach came, and even though they were all American, they didn't fit the system, right? So we were able to sort of help the other people get that way. And the NCAA got rid of the NPO, as we called it. So there isn't like, there's explicitly says that head coaching or degree change is not a reason now in this new landscape. Now, is there going to be a lawsuit that says the same thing that you said, and then they open it up and say, well, there's a carve out? Because there's plenty of people that we had a new basketball coach and a new football coach last year, right? There are some people we would have liked to have stayed and left. There's people that we didn't want to stay, that, or we would have liked to have left that stayed, right? So there's, I guess, for them to be able to say you can go, but we couldn't say, well, you can go, but we won't help you go because you're really good and we want you to stay. So I think that's the problem, where people would fall on that. So it has to be an all or none kind of thing. Anyway, they chose none.
Thank you. I appreciate your thoughts.
Marnie, you came back. What you got?
I was just laughing about the turning off the recording.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, well, I was hoping we could share some best practices or how y'all manage this turmoil, but for sure, if you want to pick my brain outside of this, Keenan has my information. If you'll have an idea that I didn't cover, please, we're all trying to make everybody's lives easier. So happy to chat about it later, or now if you had an epiphany.
Oh, wait, I did have one more epiphany.
Oh, Epiphany, great.
I also was just wondering, I'm always interested on the other side of the transfer portal for students who enter but then end up staying at their institution. And I kind of wish that there was like some research existing out there about basically how these student athletes were feeling post not transferring, and then kind of, how their institution like accepted them back. Do you have any like resources or knowledge based off of kind of the student athlete experience for like entering but then staying, and for whatever that reason might be?
No, that's really, no, I thought about it a little bit because I know we have a handful of people that try to leave mainly at like 80%, and they realize they can't find someplace. And so they just come back and graduate, and they're not necessarily part of the team and still on scholarship, but they're just, staying that one semester. So I don't know. We probably had a handful, this is just firsthand, we probably had a handful of people that I'm looking to see if I can go somewhere else for grad school, like, in an Olympic sport, and maybe I didn't find one that I like. And I'm not miserable here. I'm not really trying to leave, but just want to see if there's something out there. And then, they're doing the postgraduate exception where they can kind of be in the portal earlier, and they ultimately stayed as part of the team. But most of the people that go in the portal for us aren't back on the team. They're either back in school to get their degree, or they're where they want to be, or they're in the great beyond somewhere.
We had a couple that were like working on a plan with coaches where either like finances were an issue here, or they wanted to see if there was grad opportunities elsewhere, that they had already established with coaches that they were going to put their name in, but not, the coach was good with that and understood the plan. But I think that has to be part of the conversation as students as we're thinking about going in. It's what that means for their relationship with their coach. And I don't think they always think that through.
Yes. And then the NCAA makes you watch a 7-minute video that they don't watch either. So it's kind of, what else? How else can you tell them what they need to hear? Because they already know all the answers. They're going to find a place. They're going to meet percentage. They're going to get a full scholarship. And I'm like, okay, good luck.
Even if they stop doing any work in their classes now,
Yeah.
between now and when they transfer.
And that's the other thing. I know y'all are kind of frontline people as far as who they talk to. So they also think that they could go home or wherever home is and not finish the term. So selfishly, we want them to finish for APR points, but for themselves, they need to be eligible as well. So keep from a mental health standpoint or whatever, stay on top of them and their academics.
Yeah, I've even heard of some guys getting in the transfer portal for NIL reasons and then coming back though too. I've heard of those instances happening now as well. So it's just throwing my little piece out there. That's all I
They
got.
didn't really want to leave. They never were going to intend to leave. They just
Nah,
wanted to see what
it's
we could up
leverage.
the ante with.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And it works. It works if you're good enough.
Right. All right, Keenan, we'll sign off here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here briefly for the QR code for a session evaluation. Just give some feedback for Blair. She killed it, she does this with her eyes closed, but I want to show her some love, some positive feedback, different things like that. So here you go. Leave it up there for a while.